Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you to the Minister and our colleagues present today. I've been writing a lot of love letters to both the Minister and the Chairperson, so it's nice to finally have the engagement in person so we can ventilate a lot of the issues that we've been ventilating through email correspondence. So on the 5th of March, just to take it back a little bit, we had an engagement with the National Lotteries Commission raising issues of concern, and I'm glad that the Honorable Gigaba also speaks to how exactly do we seek to define conflict of interest, because it's been an ongoing conversation in the committee. And on the 5th of March, as the FF, we raised specific concerns about the alignment of quite a number of the bidders with the African National Congress in various manifestations. We spoke about Hosken Consolidated Investments, which is led by Johnny Copeland, who was a minister of the ANC in the 90s, which has affiliations with SACTU, a union of COSATU. We spoke about Tembe Investments, which was also a bidder, which donated about 60 million to the ANC in 2021 for the local government elections. And we posed a question to the National Lotteries Commission as to how was this not flagged and picked up in the first place, and how were these entities shortlisted. It would later also become apparent that there was a Sizekhaya Holdings, which was established a couple of weeks before, if I'm not mistaken, the bidding for the National Lotteries license closed, which has shareholding by Gold Rush Consortium, which we are all now aware is led by one Sandile Zungu, who was a chairperson hopeful in the African National Congress's KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Conference, and also by one Moses Tembe, who's a, whether true or not, known affiliate of the same political party. So I say this to illustrate the fact that it is not a targeted campaign against one bidder, as many might want to portray it, but there's actually been a consistent position to illustrate perceived or real conflicts of interest in this entire process, which shows to poor vetting systems within the National Lotteries Commission, and how we can do better moving forward, because the National Lottery is an institution that is extremely important to the people of this country, the nation, and must always be protected from being used as an instrument for possibly political party funding or self-gratification by individuals or political institutions. So it's really an earnest to protect this institution from being crippled by political infiltration. We've heard more, as days have gone by, that there's actually two streams of political interest. So I'm glad also that the Honorable Gama raised this, that corruption in South Africa has been able to operate around the law. So the National Lotteries Act has a very technical and definitive definition of what constitutes, what it deems a political exposure in terms of political office bearers. But then what happens when political office bearers have close relations with leaders or owners of entities that are bidding for the National Lotteries National Lotteries license rather? Because outside of the shareholding of Sizekhaya goes beyond Gold Rush Consortium now, because we've come to hear that there is also Bellamont Gaming, which for the interests of not naming individuals that might not necessarily be actively involved in the political process, the name of the Deputy President of South Africa has come up as well. So Sizekhaya has two streams of political interests, through Gold Rush and through Bellamont Consortium as well, through Sandile Zungu, and now we're hearing through the Deputy President Paul Mashatile. So I want us to have an appreciation on the fact that there are these blurred lines regarding political exposure and political office bearing. And does the minister not think that this could have been avoided by doing a thorough vetting of this process so that we do not raise what are legitimate concerns about the influence of political parties on national entities which are for the public good. Does the minister think it was wise? We can hear the definitivity of the National Lotteries Act in terms as it refers to the political office bearers. But with the history of this country, particularly recent history, of how we know how sub-entities, shell entities, spouses, relatives are utilized to navigate around laws that prohibit political office bearers from running state institutions or trading with the state, does the minister not think it would have been wise to pursue the awarding of the license to an entity less politically exposed, whether directly or indirectly, whether through office bearers using relatives, using sub-entities, using colleagues, using sub-entities, and things of that nature? I'm interested in the ethical question of it and how it could have been avoided. The second part speaks to the bid evaluation committee. So there's been concerns raised around conflicts of interest around the bid evaluation committee members, and I also do not accept that the entity that appointed the bid evaluation committee can then conduct its own investigation to clear those people of conflict of interest. I think that's a conflict of interest in itself. There should have been external sourcing of assessment as to whether these individuals are conflicted with bidders for the very license that they are supposed to award. So the internal investigation that is being cited as justification for there not to be a conflict of interest is quite insufficient. And the Auditor General indeed could have been a mechanism, because the questions are now becoming much broader and the legitimacy of the process is becoming quite questionable. The chairperson, I had Honorable from POSA asking that who are the names. We have been made privy to some of the names. Andrew Mashifane, we're told, was the chairperson of the bid evaluation committee, was found to have conducted misconduct in 2023 by the Independent Regulatory Board for Auditors. Was he vetted before he was appointed? Miriam Motamu was a committee member who were told attended a gala dinner of Gold Rush Consortium. Was this individual vetted? And Anne Marie Pooley, we're told, owns machines in an establishment in Tshwane, which belong to Gold Rush Consortium. That means she was trading with the very entity that she was supposed to preside over as to whether a license should be awarded to or not. So how thorough was the vetting process of the appointment of bid evaluation committee members? And perhaps the Honorable Kikaba's point becomes important as well, because perhaps we're asking the wrong person when we ask the minister. Was the minister directly involved in the appointment of the bid evaluation committee? If not, who was? Is he privy to any thorough vetting process of these individuals? Because his reliance on an internal report clearing these individuals and perhaps others, I think, would be a dereliction of duty if he has not independently and thoroughly also done his own work to check whether these individuals had been vetted. So can we get an explanation on that as well? And then I'll echo the comments of the Honorable Mdluli that there's a lot of documentation that we would want to be availed to us, and is there willingness to avail that documentation so that we can see through a transparent process whether this was conducted fairly, ethically, and without any considerations of political bias or political interest. I'll leave it there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, the issue, on a lighter note, Honorable Minister, I was saying to Honorable Gigaba and Honorable Tambo that there's a conflict of interest. They know each other. Because that's how we are going that route now. So the next time there is a tender, we will check whether or not they've declared that they know each other. Now, I want to address this political question about the Deputy President by asking you, Minister, a question, which I think will assist us to then appreciate where things come from. And by no means we seek to protect anybody in this committee. We speak our mind. We want to know what was the extent of the involvement of the Deputy President in the process that we've explained to us now. If indeed in any way the Deputy President was by law, whether you were reporting to him or you were sharing notes with him or whatever that got him involved, so that when we ask this question next time about whether or not there is a corrupt relationship between the awarding of this tender and the Deputy President, we are able to be mindful of what was the extent of his involvement. Because as far as we know, if it was your wife or your wife's sister, you probably will say that. You will say, Minister, you are conflicted because you have been saying to the committee you had an opportunity by law to apply your mind to make a determination about the license. So we're asking this question to you so that at least we can lay this. Otherwise, we can bring people who are not involved here. You'll even bring my ancestors that I also got involved in the tent. So we want to know directly what was the extent of the Deputy President in the process as prescribed until a decision was made. Because I'm sure the other issues he will answer for himself, how the sister-in-law and whoever that is being said in the newspapers are being involved. So we ask that so that at least on our platform, we're not seen to be just dragging people on the basis of newspaper report, but we are seeking facts. The newspaper reports are helping us to guide questions which are going to provide clarity with regard to how these individuals were involved in this particular process. And lastly, I would want to implore to members of the committee, and I think at least there's one sense that I'm getting from all of us, that we appreciate that there could be some court issues that will arise, that there is no rush, holding people to account. We have 5 years. So this matter is not going to end today. No, we'll ask it every time. When we see NLC, we'll be asking you about how did you give these ones or not these ones. No. But when the court has run its process, we will request for our own, so that when we ask how we arrived at this, we'll request some documents. And we have been guided. I will share with you, if you can just share a page on what our legal team has said. I just didn't read those provisions already because we understood that we'll accept that until you finish the court case, all other documents become public document, and things that are secrets or trade test or blah, 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 you will find a way of not sharing those, but the rest you can share. I would like to give you the last bite, Minister, and the team, so that we can then conclude the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair, once again. And maybe to start with a direct question that you asked in relation to the Deputy President. Certainly the Deputy President was not involved in the process of adjudication and decision-making, whether formally or informally. And there's no provision in law that says that the Deputy President or any other member of the executive, except for the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, has a responsibility in this regard. Chair, as you indicated, we are prepared to share documentation at the appropriate time and to appear before the committee to engage with any issues that the committee would want us to follow up on. I'll allow the Commission to also comment on some of the other issues, so I won't deal with everything. As to when did the Minister meet with the board, I don't have the exact dates. I'm not sure whether you've got the actual dates, so the team will indicate the actual dates at which we had the discussions. And the due diligence process was explained in detail. And it is explained in detail in relation to the provisions of the RFP. So the RFP says this, do you undertake a due diligence in line with the RFP? That's what you do. Do you determine and audit and raise or flag issues because they are relevant in relation to the RFP? You do. Do you raise any other matters that are of relevance or importance to the extent that the team would have seen it as important? They would have. But I think that to expect the team to anticipate that, in fact, in a particular process, every individual's relations would be known, I think is a bit more than would be required in the process that they undertook. Does it mean that when matters come to our attention, we need to apply our minds? We do need to do that. But I don't think that we can suggest that the indications of the auditors and the role they played was inadequate. I think would be a gap. I think the issues around Ituba Holdings and Paytronics will be addressed. There was no process by design that sought to award to an individual company. We debated the issue, do we go through a process given that we need to issue a temporary license, and we sought advice in this regard, and we received due advice, including how to undertake that process, and we did as advised. The information, as I said, will be shared. Are we willing to release the names at the appropriate time? Certainly, it's not a secret. It's not something that we're going to withhold. We'll just indicate the point at which all the names are released, and the committee can exercise oversight. So I thought I should conclude at least my comments with I think they need to acknowledge the role of the chair, the board, and the commission in stabilizing the National Lotteries Commission, because in reality, they inherited an organization that had significant challenges that have been in the public domain. And to a large extent, they've gone a significant way in ensuring that those matters are addressed. Of course, the issue of the license is an issue that they've had to deal with, but there are a whole range of other issues that they are dealing with to ensure stability in that organization. And I think it's been quite commendable, including in certain instances having to endure personal attacks. But I think the colleagues have understood that, in fact, under the circumstances, those sort of issues will be raised and allegations would be made to the minister about individual members. They would be made to members of the committee, and those issues would be surfaced. But in reality, they've had to endure those processes under the difficult circumstances. And I thought it's important to acknowledge that. In certain instances, it's par for the course for us as public representatives, but for many who serve in boards and so on, of course, they serve in public organizations, but we do need to continue to attract people into public entities, and the best in our country should be ready to serve in these institutions. And I think that the chair and the team has done their work diligently in this regard. I fully agree, and I think we've expressed this point, that there are areas that do require review. There are lessons that we have learned. There are areas and gaps that we need to improve on in terms of what the law says, how the law prescribes, how it ensures appropriate governance, what the processes would be, what happens when we transition into a public lottery that is publicly owned, and what we need to do and what sort of governance systems we'll put in place. I think the chair did comment on the equity that the state has. It was responded to, Member Mhluli, but I think the chair also commented on those matters. But I'll ask the chair and the commissioner to fill in. Thank you very much.